All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to St. Louis County Library's virtual program, Fabulous Fall Reads. We are excited to be here with you tonight to discuss some really great books to read in the fall. I'm Sarah. I'm an adult services librarian here at St. Louis County Library. And before we get started, I would like to go over some things in our Zoom environment. Okay, so tonight's program is in a webinar format. So that means that your camera and microphone are not active. So no one can see or hear you, but you should be able to see and hear us. If you are having trouble seeing or hearing us, we suggest that you turn the volume up on your device or that you leave the webinar and move a little bit closer to your router and rejoin. If you do have questions, though, you can enter them in our chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but feel free to enter your questions in the chat, as we go along. We'll just answer them at the end. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm Sarah. I work in the Adult Services Department in Readers Advisory, which is like matchmaking between readers and books. And I'm joined tonight by Harry, also in Adult Services Readers Advisory, Yoli from the Lewis and Clark branch, and Brandon from Mid-County. So we're all excited to be here with you tonight. All of the books we're going to talk about are carried by the library, and you can get them by going either to our library catalog or to eMedia to get a copy. We are all going to talk about a forthcoming pick tonight too, so a book that isn't out yet, but they are all in the catalog already, so you can hop on the hold list before they even come out. If you did sign up before, say, 1 o'clock today, you may have gotten an email from me where I attached a handout that has all of the books that we are going to talk about tonight, and the covers are clickable. If you click on the cover, it will take you to the catalog so you can place a hold. If you didn't get that email from me, no worries. We are recording tonight's presentation, and when it is ready to view on YouTube, I will send out a follow-up email that will have a link to that recording, and it'll also have the handout attached to it. So yeah, so you'll get that then. And with that, I think that we will go ahead. I'll go ahead and start us off. So I'm going to be our first presenter tonight. And so, I think that every season has like a vibe, right? But for me, fall is the vibiest of all of the seasons. Tonight's picks might not all take place in the fall, but they all cover like all the different fall vibes, whether that's cozy or spooky or enchanting, harvest, learned, witchy, suspenseful, like all of those different things. And between the four presenters tonight, we really have all of your fall vibes covered. So my first pick is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and it is the coziest of cozy fantasies. It's about a librarian named Keela who works at the Imperial Magical Library. And she must flee with her talking, sentient spider plant assistant, Kaz. And they have to, with all the books that they can carry, because a revolution has come to the capital and it's like burning the city to the ground. So they commandeer a sailboat and head to the small town island where Keela was born and spent her childhood before her family moved to the capital, for more economic opportunities. When she gets there, though, she's relieved to find that, her childhood cottage is still standing, but the town seems really run down. And of course, she has like no money to sustain her while she's there. And so she's not really sure how she's going to survive. Now, as a librarian, her job is to protect the magic books, but never to use them. Magic is only for the most powerful members of the royalty and their appointed magicians. But given the revolution and the fact that she's so far from the capital, she and Kaz decide that it would be okay to use like just a few spells, like just to get by for a bit. So they use their magic to increase the berry harvest, and they open a jam shop where they also sell natural remedies that are actually magical spells and potions to help the town, which has fallen on hard times since the imperial magicians have stopped coming regularly. And, it's hard to keep her secret, though, when her handsome, uncommonly kind Merhorse ranching neighbor keeps poking around in her business and being helpful. So the question is, can Keela get over her natural inclination to keep to herself and become a true part of the town? Does she really want to? And is that even safe since she's breaking so many laws? You'll have to read this adorable cottagecore fantasy to find out. It's definitely a good pick for fans of Legends and Lattes or the very secret Society of Irregular Witches. Okay, my next pick is nonfiction. It is The Comfort of Crows by Margaret Renkel, who is the very popular New York Times columnist and essayist. She's written before about her childhood in Alabama, as well as like living in the South in general, but this book focuses much closer to home, her own backyard in Nashville. It comprises 52 essays, one for every week of the year, and they follow her close observations of the plants and the wildlife in her yard as the seasons turn. Her lyrical writing makes even the most mundane of tasks, like bird feeder maintenance, and a very funny story about what she thinks is an owl pellet, but might not be, into like opportunities to reflect on the place of humans in the natural world, the passing of time, and the particularities of place. Because she says in the book, quote, nothing in nature exists as a metaphor, but human beings are reckless metaphor makers anyway, and only a fool could fail to find the lesson here, end quote. So, this lovely book is a reminder that nature isn't just like out there, right? A place that we have to go visit, but it's like all around us. And hopefully it'll inspire you to make your own backyard into a haven for local wildlife. And if you want more help on planting natives in your yard, keep an eye out for our Partners for Native Landscaping webinar series that we host in the early spring every year here at the library. It provides a wealth of information for both beginners and experienced gardeners alike. And in the meantime, fall is a great time to both start feeding the birds and to dream about spring garden plans. So I hope this reflective, poetic book inspires you this season. Okay, my next pick is Love and Fury by Samantha Silva. Many people associate Frankenstein by Mary Shelley with Halloween, and Shelley was a literary pioneer, and that book is considered one of the first sci-fi horror novels. Her mother, the philosopher and activist Mary Wollstonecraft, was also a pioneer in the fight for women's rights. Unfortunately, she died quite young in childbirth due to complications during Mary Shelley's birth. In this historical fiction novel, Wollstonecraft is urged by her midwife to tell her life story to her baby daughter as a distraction from the pain during and after childbirth, and it is quite an extraordinary story. She was a headstrong girl who chafed under her violent and strict father. At 16, she finds an outlet for her unconventional ideas when she forms a passionate relationship with the botanical artist Fanny Blood, but is devastated when Fanny dies 10 years later. Her grief, though, pushes her to write such influential works as A Vindication of the Rights of Women and to make connections with the leading intellectuals of the day, such as William Blake, Thomas Paine, and the radical philosopher William Godwin, who she eventually marries and has baby Mary Shelley with, after she'd had an illegitimate child with another man. Wollstonecraft truly lived her life with little regard for conventions of the day, and she had several romantic and platonic entanglements. She and Godwin, though, considered themselves soulmates and attempted to have an egalitarian marriage. So it really was tragic when it was cut so short. It's a particularly good time to read this book, as baby Mary Shelley was born on August 30th, and Mary Wollstonecraft died on September 10th, 1797. So the anniversary of the events in this book has just passed. So I hope that you read this slim little book that packs a really strong emotional punch and that inspires you to think about how far we've come as women, but also how far we still need to go. Okay, my next pick is Summer's End by Juno Black, which is actually a pen name of a writing duo, Jocelyn Cole and Sharon Nagel. And I usually leave the mysteries to Harry, who you're going to hear from next. But I really love a good high concept, cozy mystery, and this one just seemed like right for the season. This is the fifth installment in the Shady Hollow series, but don't feel like you need to read the other four first or anything. The author does include enough information at the beginning to orient you to like the world of the book. And there's also a list of recurring characters there. And in this series, all of the characters are anthropomorphic animals. As the author states in her introductory note, this is a world where all types of animals are, quote, living together in a civilized manner, except for the murders, of course. How does this world work? How does a moose run a coffee shop? How does a raven run a bookstore? How does an elk fit into a chair in a rabbit's home so they can play a friendly game of cards? Our advice is to let such mundane matters go, end quote. So, um, yeah, so it's like they're all anthropomorphic, but they're kind of like people, and their animal identity is a bit more abstract. But the main character of the series is Vera Vixen, who is a fox and a reporter at the local newspaper. And in this book, she's been convinced by her friend to help chaperone a school trip to the nearby ancient burial mound Summer's End. It was created not only to be a burial site, but also a harvest calendar, as the sun shines directly through it on the day that summer tips towards fall and the harvest should begin. But on the morning of this amazing celestial event, a body is found inside the barrow, surrounded by candles and ancient figurines as if it were a death ritual, although the details don't seem to be historically accurate. The victim is the director of the archaeological dig. So was the motive academic infighting or competition for research funding, or is there a larger conspiracy going on? And the answer might just illuminate more than the crime, but also the origins of this woodland society itself. So if you want a cozy mystery that mashes up Beatrix Potter and dark academia, then this is definitely one for you. Okay, my next pick is Venco by Sherry Demeline. Um, it's a witchy contemporary fantasy inspired by Canadian Indigenous Métis culture. The main character, Lucky St. James, is underemployed and struggling to get by. Her father abandoned her as a baby, and her free-spirited, sort of irresponsible mother died of cancer when she was 8. And so she was taken in by her grandmother. But now in her late 20s, Lucky is starting to be the one to take on the role of caretaker as her grandmother is showing signs of dementia. Lucky's life seems pretty bleak and like it's going nowhere until one day she finds a tiny silver spoon with the word Salem engraved on it, and it hums with an otherworldly power. Her life is upended when she finds out that magic is real, and she is the sixth witch in a coven that is designed to, or is destined to, upend the patriarchy and usher in a new age. The catch is that she has to find the seventh and final witch to complete the coven. And she only has 17 days to do it. She and her grandmother go on a road trip to search for this witch, learning about magic and themselves along the way, of course. And um, if that if that ticking clock weren't enough, there's also a witch hunter from an ancient order on their trail. This book brings like all the 90s witchy stories, like Charmed and The Craft and Practical Magic, into the 21st century. If you're looking for something with those like 90s whimsigoth vibes and modern diverse characters, then this is the book for you. Okay. And then my last pick is for, excuse me. My last pick is forthcoming. So all of us have a book that we're going to talk about that is not quite out yet. And mine is Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. It is coming out September 24th, so very soon. All of our forthcoming picks are already in the catalog, so feel free to jump onto the whole list. I loved Rio's dark academia novel, If We Were Villains, which was about an elite college Shakespearean acting troupe whose creative competitiveness and romantic entanglements end in murder. So I was really excited to hear about her next novel, which is about a group of 5 night shift workers who regularly meet up for a late night smoke break in the college's ancient cemetery. This includes the editor-in-chief of the college newspaper, a manager of a local college bar, a rideshare driver, and a hotel night clerk, and then the caretaker of the cemetery. And one night on their smoke break, it's disturbed when they find a freshly dug empty grave. And yeah, and then even though the caretaker says that like no one has been buried, no one new has been buried in this cemetery for like a century. And then they spy someone dumping rat corpses into the hole. And then when they investigate, the rats have like strange growths on them. So they theorize that they're related to shady scientific research that's going on in the university. And Edie, the newspaper editor, sets out to like figure out what is going on. So Publishers Weekly says, quote, Rio stuffs a plethora of surprises into her concise narrative without skimping on character development, end quote. And this isn't surprising to me because the characters and their relationships were also at the center of her previous novel, also very atmospheric and sort of dark. So this time of year between back to school and Halloween is the perfect time for a dark academia novel. So I'm really excited to dig into this one, pun intended. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Harry. Take it away, Harry.
Thanks, Sarah. So my first one, The Unraveling, if you like The Silent Patient, about a relationship between a patient and their psychiatrist, I think you'll like this one. This one also involves a grieving psychiatrist who falls for a potentially dangerous patient. Meredith, the psychiatrist, her late husband was a professional hockey player who became injured and had to retire early. He became addicted to pain pills and alcohol and caused a fatal crash that killed Gabriel's family. Well, guess who Meredith is stalking? Gabriel. Why? Well, you'll have to find out. And guess who comes into Meredith's office as her new patient? Gabriel. Meredith crosses every ethical line you can imagine, which reminded me of a Frida McFadden novel. And I would compare this to Frida McFadden, except that with as many twists as it has, this is a little bit more complicated. So instead of going 150 miles an hour strapped in next to the author, you're going maybe 100 miles an hour. Highly recommend this if you want a twisty, soapy thriller. My second book is a true crime book, A Gentleman and a Thief. And this one is also set in fall, like the previous one. Arthur Berry grows up poor in a Massachusetts mill town. He wants to be wealthy, so he mimics the rich. He learns how to talk like them. He learns how to dress like them. He comes back from World War I. He's got a criminal record. What kind of a job is he going to get? So he starts studying the society pages as well as the social register. And he finds out where where the rich like to party. And wearing a tux, he shows up at these parties, invited or uninvited, and makes off with the equivalent of $60 million in jewels. Because if you're rich, you want to flaunt your jewels. You want your picture taken in the society pages wearing all your jewelry. So he studies all that, including robbing from the British royal family when they come to visit the United States. This book is terrific. We get to go to rich people's parties, secret gambling dens. We get to meet fellow crooks, as well as the detectives who take down poor Mr. Barry. What I really liked about this book is it doesn't just end with his arrest. No, we get to see the rest of his life. There's photographs. It's very well researched. If you like Eric Larson books, you'll enjoy this one. My third book, The Wedding People, this is just a terrific book. Now, the author has her master's in fine arts from Washington University, and the main character, Phoebe, poor Phoebe. Phoebe is an adjunct professor at the same school in St. Louis, which isn't named, where her husband has tenure. Phoebe can't get pregnant. IVF treatments have failed. She finds out that her husband has had an affair with a colleague, and her cat died. That's it. Phoebe has decided to go to Newport, Rhode Island to kill herself. And she's going to this resort in Newport at the same time as an all week long wedding is taking place. Oh my gosh. So the bridezilla of bridezillas, Lila, is there to have her wedding, and she is not going to let Phoebe interrupt her wedding. So these two women develop a relationship, but there's some really good zingers in dialogue in this book. If you're a fan of Sally Rooney, Curtis Sittenfeld, or Elizabeth Berg, you will enjoy this book. It's got everything. So I would I loved it. I recommend it to my sister who traveled to Europe this summer. She loved it. I think you'll like it. My fourth book is a very woodsy murder. And like what Sarah had, this is a cozy mystery. I'm a big fan of Ellen Byron. This is a brand new series for her. The main character is a former sitcom writer, just like Ellen Byron was, who moves to rural Found Gold, California with her ex-husband. They do get along to buy a rural motel and make a living out of it. Unfortunately, their first guest is found murdered. Not good for business. So poor Dee has to solve this case. There are lots of suspects. Adjacent to Found Gold is the next town over called Gold's Gone. Because Found Gold is where the miners did find gold, but then the gold ran out and their ancestors or their relatives set up this Gold's Gone town, which became a big tourist attraction. So is it one of those townspeople who doesn't want this new motel to work? Are they the ones behind this, or is it somebody else? You have quirky locals, a fast pace, and lots of twists, making this a great cozy mystery. My next book is Lost Letters from Martha's Vineyard. In this book, Kit, a junior news producer from Manhattan, is going through her late grandmother's belongings. She finds a playbill for a 1959 Martha's Vineyard production. Grandma Nancy is in the production, but her name isn't Nancy. Her name is Mercy Wells. Who is Mercy Wells? Well, of course, Kit has to get to the bottom of this. So we have alternating narratives about what happened to Mercy. Why did she leave California and her film career and come to Martha's Vineyard? And what what did Kit's investigation reveal? So we've got historical fiction, we've got a mystery, we've got romance, and family secrets that come out all in under 300 pages. So I'm looking at you, Kristen Hanna and Kate Quinn. This is not a doorstop historical fiction book. This one is for Taylor Jenkins Reid fans who like family drama, who like a little bit of mystery, a little bit of romance, and a fast pace. So I would recommend it. My last book is an upcoming book. You can see it's coming out on November 14th. This is the last book in the Peter Diamond series, but you can read it as a standalone. You don't have to have read the other books. It's a police procedural. Detective Peter Diamond just wants to go on vacation. He goes to this small town in England, and a former colleague asks him to investigate a closed murder case in which the woman who owns the village's largest dairy farm has been convicted of manslaughter after a grain silo incident. All Peter wants to do is take a vacation. Instead, he gets dragged into this murder case, and to do that, he has to pose as a country gentleman. Poor Peter has to attend the annual harvest festival, operate a tractor, herd cows, and attend a hoedown. At the same time as he's doing this imposter gig, there's a murderer on the loose. So if you like British procedurals, then I think you will like this Peter Lovesey book, which is the conclusion of the series, unless the publisher drags the author back into writing another one. I'm going to pass it off to Yoli.
Hi, everyone. When I think of fall, I think of spooky reads. I really enjoy being scared, but also a good thrill and a mystery. So my first book is Jackal by Erin E. Adams. Jackal is a gripping thriller that follows Liz, a young Black woman, as she goes back to her mostly white Rust Belt town of Jonestown, Pennsylvania, for her best friend's wedding. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But as the title suggests, things are not as they seem. Every couple of years, a young Black girl goes missing and is found in the woods with her heart missing as well. When Liz's best friend's daughter goes missing, Liz is thrust into these tragic disappearances as the key to finding Caroline is unraveling why this all started in the first place. If you're into thrillers and books that make you look over your shoulder at night and wonder just what is beyond the darkness that you can't see, which is absolutely what I did while reading this book, I highly recommend Jackal. Adam's writing is fast paced, and I found myself having to hold back from choosing a random page to skip to, just hoping to know a little bit more about the story. Instead, I read the book in less than a week on crisp nights, telling myself it was fiction, there were streetlights along my street, and no woods to be dragged into. My next book is Carroll County, Countless Haints by Cullen Bunn and illustrated by Tyler Crook. Countless Haints collects the first 4 issues and the Harrow County Dark Southern Gothic Fairy Tale graphic novel series. Amy Crawford has always felt a special connection to the woods around her home and suspected that there were supernatural beings lurking between the fronds of trees. Countless Haints introduces readers to Emmy, her father Isaac, and the townspeople and Haints who make up Harrow County and its twisted history. At its core, Harrow County is a coming-of-age story about good versus evil and what truly makes us human. It's a spooky story for autumn days and nights, but Emmy is a character who will take root deep in your heart. Countless Haints is a short read and great for fans of Southern Gothic, horror, coming-of-age stories, and who enjoy getting lost in the feeling of never-ending night. Okay. Next up, I have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is such a title, by Grady Hendrix. So to set the mood for you, vampires, the 1990s, Southern heat, and housewives who read true crime paperbacks in their book club are thrust into a real-life supernatural mystery when a vampire comes to their sleepy South Carolina neighborhood. And that's not a spoiler. Grady introduces the idea of the vampire pretty early on. Patricia Campbell is one of those housewives. Her doctor husband Carter is often busy working long nights. And as her children Blue and Corey grow into teenagers, they are moody and preoccupied with everything except their mother's feelings. When Patricia is attacked by her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Savage, one night, her life collides with Mrs. Savage's nephew, who's mysterious and charming and a little bit dark, James Harris. It's up to Patricia and the other housewives in her book club to either defeat James or watch their entire row burn at his hands or teeth. Hendrix takes the familiar tropes and lore we know about vampires and puts his own spin on the genre. There were quite a few times when I felt like time stood still around me as I read. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires is a page turner, and I felt like I was in a race against time with myself to finish the book. Just when I thought I knew where Hendrix was going with the characters and the vampire lore itself, he flipped things just enough to make what feels familiar his own. Okay. And then next up, we have, so for my forthcoming release, I have The Imposium, a health resort horror story by Olga Tokarczuk. And the release date for that is September 24th. Continuing with my trend of thrillers with mysteries beyond what meets the eye, I am super excited about the forthcoming release, The Imposium, a health resort horror story, another really long title. This is a fall read right up my alley, where the surroundings are just as much a character in the story as the human. The novel takes place in September of 1913, when a student suffering from tuberculosis arrives at a health resort for men in the mountains of what is today Western Poland. The men join together in the dining room to ponder the topics of the time while drinking a hallucinogenic local liquor. Unknown to the men, strange things begin happening in the surrounding mountains. As reports of what is happening slowly reaches the men, so does a slow sense of dread. Is there something after and or watching them? What does it want? From a description of the book, Tokarczuk blends horror story, comedy, folklore, and feminist parable with brilliant storytelling. And I am handing it over to Brandon. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. I'm Brandon. When I think of fall, I think of mixed in with all of the spooky stuff and all of the going back to school sort of vibes. I think that there's a sort of inevitable bittersweet melancholy, the transition from summer to winter. So all of my books have that as a sort of core. So my first book is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. It is the first in a trilogy of books that follows a young man named Quentin Coldwater, who is brilliant but miserable. A senior in high school, he's still secretly preoccupied with a series of fantasy novels he read as a child, set in a magical land called Fillory. Imagine his surprise when he finds himself unexpectedly admitted to a very secret, very exclusive college of magic in upstate New York, where he receives a thorough and rigorous education in the craft of modern sorcery. He also discovers all the other things people learn in college: friendship, love, sex, booze, and boredom. Something is missing, though. Magic doesn't bring Quentin the happiness and adventure he dreamed it would. After graduation, he and his friends make a stunning discovery. Fillory is real, but the land of Quentin's fantasies turn out to be much darker and more dangerous than he could have imagined. His childhood dream becomes a nightmare with a shocking truth at its heart. As both a fan of fantasy fiction and literary fiction, find that there is not enough there are not enough books and authors working in the sort of intersection of those two things. Lev Grossman is somebody who does it exceptionally well. The Magicians is a book with what I would call psychological acuity. These are real people dealing with real emotional issues, but then there is the backdrop of magic being real, and those just aid the exploration of literary character. Quentin himself is a character that, as he is explored through these three books that cover not just his young adult life, but up and through his 40s by time the final book ends, uh, explores a character with a deep sense of depression and anxiety. And the magic in the books just helps us dive into those topics and explore them with just as much whimsy as the seriousness. My next title is Slade House by David Mitchell. Uh, this is just a rollicking haunted house book. Down the road from a working class British pub, along the brick wall of a narrow alley, if the conditions are exactly right, you'll find the entrance to Slade House. A stranger will greet you by name and invite you inside. At first, you won't want to leave. Later, you'll find that you can't. Every 9 years, the house's residents, an odd brother and sister, extend a unique invitation to someone who's different or lonely: a precocious teenager, a recently divorced policeman, a shy college student. But what really goes on inside Slade House? For those who find out, it's already too late. Spanning 5 decades from the last days of the 1970s to the present, leaping genres and barreling toward an astonishing conclusion, this intricately woven novel will pull you into a reality-warping new vision of the haunted house story. David Mitchell is, I think, one of the most talented novelists working today. I don't think he gets the credit he should in literary circles. He is a true virtuoso in the sense that I think he's like a literary chameleon. He has many novels. He writes them in almost exclusively first person point of view, and they all feel entirely different. Now, that is something that is incredibly difficult to do. Normally, when an author writes a first person novel, while we might like the different stories and the different characters, they all take on a certain tonality and voice. David Mitchell is able to switch voices and it still feels true and correct and right, and not performative in any aspect. This particular book has 3 different points of view as they all enter this haunted house, and they are all remarkably different, and they all still feel exactly like they should be. This, I believe, is a sort of continuation from his novel, The Bone Clocks, although I have not read The Bone Clocks. You do not need to read that to enjoy this novel. And then each section of the book sort of reveals a little bit more of the secret of this odd brother and sister duo and what they're up to. It is a shorter novel, so even if you were to pick it up anytime before October, I think it's a perfect book to read for that season, and you could get it and read it, and it's not like a doorstop that's going to take you too much time to read. My next selection is The Art of Fielding by Chad Harbach. At Westis College, a small school on the shore of Lake Michigan, baseball star Henry Scrimshander seems destined for big league stardom, but when a routine throw goes disastrously off course, the fates of 5 people are upended. Henry's fight against self-doubt threatens to ruin his future. College president Gwert Affenlight, a longtime bachelor, has fallen unexpectedly and helplessly in love. Owen Dunn, Henry's gay roommate and teammate, becomes caught up in a dangerous affair. Mike Schwartz, the Harpooners team captain and Henry's best friend, realizes he has guided Henry's career at the expense of his own. And Pella Affenlight, Gwert's daughter, returns to Westish after escaping an ill-fated marriage, determined to start a new life. As the season counts down to its climactic final game, these 5 are forced to confront their deepest hopes, anxieties, and secrets. In the process, they forge new bonds and help one another find their true paths. Chad Harbach has only written this novel. He has edited a sort of prestigious literary magazine called N+1 for a number of years. And I think the fact that this is his only novel speaks to a certain dedication to quality and honesty in his storytelling, that he's just not out here to put pen to paper to sort of produce works just to support himself. This book is sort of like the quintessential college novel to me. All the characters are either going to school or are part of the faculty there, and they're all just sort of fighting the same fight of self-discovery and self-doubt. And I find the relationships in this novel are extremely full of depth and compelling thought, especially the relationship between Gwert and Owen Dunn. It is a queer relationship that I found does not succumb to any tropes or sort of shallow examinations of those things. It's a complicated relationship. There's an age gap, but it is explored with such warmth and humanity that I think you can't help but sort of fall for these characters in all of their messiness. And even though you might not like the things that they do, I think that their emotions are, in their specificity, sort of then accessible by everyone in the way that good literature often is. My next selection are the Garden Wall graphic novels. Now, these are written by various people. They are about 2 lost brothers who venture across a strange forest and discover incredible and bizarre things on their journey home in a style reminiscent of The Wind in the Willows and Sleepy Hollow. Return to the unknown with new over-the-garden wall stories that expand the world of the Emmy Award-winning Cartoon Network series. Now, this was originally based on, as I just said, a cartoon that aired. It is short. I believe it's about 8 episodes long. The episodes are also themselves fairly short, about 11 to 12 minutes. These graphic novels are a really fun continuation and I think great to read for any age, but they're especially fun, I think, if you have younger members of the family that you want to indulge in something spooky with. Over the Garden Wall exists in this kind of intersection of fairy tale and Southern Gothic Americana, where these two young brothers have a really kind of interesting like goof off and straight man relationship to each other. But the things that they're experiencing are both extremely odd. Some of them are disturbing. And the brothers have this sort of amusing, removed relationship to everything that's happening to them. The older brother is quite ironic about it, and the younger brother is sort of very aloof and goofy and sort of up to his own shenanigans. Um, this mixture of both that fairy tale comedy and the gothic is extremely compelling, I think, for anyone. So you can sort of indulge in all those fun autumn emotions of being spooked out, while also enjoying the sort of the comedy of it all. My fourth selection is a book called Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. From her place in the store, Clara, an artificial friend with outstanding observational qualities, watches carefully the behavior of those who come in to browse, and of those who pass on the street outside. She remains hopeful that a customer will soon choose her, but when the possibility emerges that her circumstances may change forever, Clara is warned not to invest too much in the promises of humans. Clara in the Sun gets at what I mentioned earlier, this sort of bittersweet, inevitable melancholy. I think that the themes explored in this book are primarily centered around caretakers and how we treat those caretakers as they age, and as those who they caretake age as well. Clara is sort of inevitably bought by a family with a young girl who is very ill, and that prevents her from being as social as she wants to be. And through the years, sort of Clara is the constant companion for this young girl. And over this stretch of years, Clara is also trying to work through her own thoughts and feelings about a world that she is slowly coming to understand. The descriptions from Clara's point of view are incredibly moving. They're astute. They're interesting in the way that Ishiguro uses an artificial intelligence to interrogate sort of the most human emotions that we have. The ending to this book is extremely poignant. I won't say it's, like a happy ending, but it's moving. And I think it perfectly captures that sort of feeling of us moving out of the bloom of summer, sort of into the restful nature of winter. My upcoming selection is Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. When the Southern Reach trilogy was first published a decade ago, it was an instant sensation. Each volume climbed the bestsellers list. The trilogy has sold over 1 million copies, and we all thought it was finished. So there were a few mysteries that had gone unsolved, some key points of view never aired, and stories left to tell. There remained questions about who had been complicit in creating the conditions for Area X that the trilogy is named after, and the story of the first mission into the Forgotten Coast before Area X was called Area X had never been fully told. So structured in 3 parts, each recounting a new expedition. There are some long-awaited answers here, to be sure, but also more questions and profound new surprises. So the trilogy that this is sort of extending began with a book called Annihilation, which is a science fiction body horror book with what I would call ecological themes and concerns. So in that book, Annihilation, a scientific investigation team goes into this area that has been contaminated by some sort of alien presence, and they're trying to figure out what's going on in the area. In that book, slowly throughout it, the point of view character who is mourning the loss of her husband changes. Things start to begin to happen to her, and what beyond all of the speculative fiction things that are happening, which are exciting and interesting and mysterious, what's really happening is an examination of how grief and catharsis change us physically as much as they do emotionally. And so, again, like with all good speculative fiction, we move from just using magic or science fiction to use those things to speak to what is going on with us emotionally. I'm super excited for Absolution. All 3 books in the Area X trilogy were extremely different, but also compelling in their own way. So I am going to throw it back to Sarah so we can wrap up.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Brandon. So something happened with our slides and it skipped 2 of Yoli's books. So I'm gonna have Yoli come back on and discuss those 2. I'm gonna see if I can find those 2 slides. If not, she's gonna just talk about them anyway. So yeah, Yoli, do you wanna come back on and I'm gonna try and find your 2 slides. So just a second here.
Okay. Yeah.
And Yoli, the professional that she is, she just like rolled with it. So,
I don't know if y'all saw me kind of just like, oh, that's not that book. Okay.
okay, hold on a second here. So I'm going to stop my share for just a second. Yeah, something has like glitched with the slides. So I'm gonna bring up your slides just so that we have something on the screen. But yeah, I don't know what happens with what happened with the slides there. So I'm very sorry about that, Yoli.
Oh, no
Just
problem.
a second here. So we have Southern Book Club up on there, but I'm gonna have you talk about your other 2, which you have Final Girls and the Writers Retreat.
So I am going to save my favorite for last. So The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. So Alex feels stuck and invisible, cast aside, and going through the motions in her own story. When she was 18, she took the leap of leaving her hometown for college and a life in New York City. Now at 30, she feels stuck in her job as an editor in academic publishing, and she has been shunned by her social circle and best friend, Ren, whom she idolizes. After a night she is reluctant to reveal the details of. The trauma from that night has led Alex to a year-long writer's block as she struggles to regain her footing. However, Alex and Ren are both chosen to attend a women-only writing retreat in the isolated home of their shared idol, author Rosa Vallow. 5 young women are chosen, and whoever writes the best novel in a month will have their book published and receive a 7-figure deal. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Alex can't turn down, even if it means living and working with Ren for a month. I think that Bartz does a great job of setting the tone and mood of the novel. Even though I read it in late August, I feel like I was at the secluded Briarcliff estate, cold and gray and cut off from the world around me. There are so many twists and turns, and as the book reaches its climax, Bartz explores female friendships, shame, and just what one will do to get ahead. So My final book is Final Girls by Riley Sager. Quincy Carpenter not only survived the worst night of her young life 10 years ago, but she has managed to thrive, somewhat. What was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway with some friends at the end of their college semester turned into a bloody massacre that only Quincy survived through what she believes is sheer luck. Although Quincy has managed to create a life for herself, a successful baking business, and a loving boyfriend, she still suffers from PTSD and survivor's guilt about what happened to all of her friends and has blocked out all memories of that night. Quincy still keeps in touch with Coop, the police officer who saved her life and who is dedicated to helping Quincy reclaim her life and story. After surviving the murders, Quincy unwillingly becomes a member of a small group of final girls. When one of them is found murdered, Quincy is sought after by the other remaining final girl, Sam Boyd. Unlike Quincy, Sam believes that the only way to truly move forward is if they face the past head on, and that means making Quincy remember everything from that night 10 years ago. I really enjoyed Sager's take on the final girl horror movie trope. In most media, we see the final girl survive, and her story usually ends as she is surrounded by flashing lights and whisked away to perceived safety. We are left to wonder what happens to her, and mostly think of the physical safety, but not what her life will be like or mental well-being. With Final Girls, Sager gives her a voice in Quincy. While the themes in this book are dark and intense, there are not a lot of jump scares, and it was more of a thriller than a straightforward horror. If you're looking for a book to read during the month of October, add Final Girls to your list. Thank you. And back to Sarah.
Thanks. Thanks, Julie. All right. So back to where we were. Okay. So before we wrap up and have a few, some time for a couple of questions, I just want to thank our presenters for presenting tonight, and bring your attention to just a few library wrap-up things. You got a lot of great suggestions tonight, but in case you want more, you should try out our personalized reading service. This is a service that you can fill out a form on our website, tell us what you like and what you don't like, and in less than a week, we will give you a list of 5 titles that we think that you would enjoy. You can find it on our website, slcl.org, under the Books, e-Media, and More section. And then a couple of upcoming programs that you might want to join us at. We do have a virtual program coming up, So You Want to Write a Children's Book. Maybe if you're readers, some of you are writers. So if you ever thought about writing a children's book, please attend this virtual program and you'll find out about all the ins and outs of the industry. And then we have an in-person program coming up that we would love for you to come to. Book group pick Sip and Stroll. It's coming up on Thursday, October 10th at 6:30 at the Clark Family Branch. It's going to be super fun. We're going to have book group leaders from all around the library system set up at different stations with their favorite picks, and you can grab a non-alcoholic drink and stroll up between the stations and chat with them about their favorite picks. We'll have a couple of literary activities, some door prizes. It's going to be a great time. We hope that you can join us. And with that, we're just about wrapping up. Does anyone have any questions? We have like maybe 5 minutes or so for questions. If you have one, please feel free to put it into the chat box. And I'm going to stop sharing our slides and have all of our presenters put themselves, turn your cameras back on, if you will. Okay. All right. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat box. I see some thank yous in there, so thank you. Yeah, I'll ask before, as people are entering some questions into the chat box, are you reading anything right now that you haven't had a chance to talk about, but that you think is good, even if you haven't finished it yet, that you're reading that you like?
So this book is a lot different from the books I recommended tonight, but I'm reading Little Rot by the author Akweke Emeze. I'm a huge fan of their work. And then I'm also finishing up the current, whatever's current in the Saga series by, I think the author, is Brian K. Vaughan. I've read a lot of his books, his graphic novels, and sometimes get them a little, but yes.
Well, I'll just say, I am currently reading Moonbound by Robin Sloan. This is a book that I talked about at our Lit Lovers program back in April when it was forthcoming. And I did get it a couple of months ago, but I had to return it because there were a whole bunch of other things that I had on hold. But I've gotten it back, and I'm really enjoying it. It's even more whimsical and like world building than his other books. So I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
I'll just tag in with, I spoke about The Magicians by Lev Grossman. He recently came out with a novel called The Bright Sword, which is his sort of 600-page doorstop addition to the King Arthur sort of romance tradition. As a nerd for those things, I loved it. Now I'm a sucker for Grossman's writing anyway. And it is a long book, but I thought he did a wonderful job sort of putting his own spin on a tradition he clearly loves as well. So I think if there's anybody who likes King Arthur books or sort of that fairy tale fantasy tradition, I think that The Bright Sword would be great. Pick it up.
You're muted, Harry.
Bright Sword is excellent. I read it. I'm reading Devil at His Elbow by Valerie Sourwine. So it's about the Murdaugh murders. Now, you probably have listened to the podcasts or watched something on Netflix about it. And there's two other books that came out. This is the best one. This author shows that that family was corrupt from the turn of the century. And there is so much detail in this book that I didn't know about. And I had listened to the podcasts and read the other books, devoured all this true crime stuff. I'm really enjoying this book. It's like some sort of Shakespearean drama.
All right. We did have one question so far asking about whether these books are available in ebook format. And I know all of mine are. I think the vast majority of the books we picked tonight are available through at least one of our two platforms. We have Libby/Overdrive, and then we also have Hoopla. And I know mine are available in at least one of those two platforms. All right. We did have someone make a comment saying that they thought that this was great and that they hope that this is a regular library feature. And we do have these staff picks book talk programs every couple of months or so. We have one coming up in December. We always do SLCL staff favorites. So in December we have one coming up where you'll have like a whole bunch of staff each talking about one or two books. So that's going to be a really good one. So keep an eye out for that. And if you've missed, if this is like your first one that you've attended and you want to see more, we have like a whole bunch of these staff picks book talk programs up on our YouTube channel. So yeah, so check it out on our YouTube channel. Let's see. Oh, we have a question for Harry that they didn't catch the author of the Murdoch book. Can you type it into the chat or
I'm doing that right now.
Awesome. And do we have any other questions? Oh, and just to put it on the recording, the book is The Devil at His Elbow, and the author is Valerie Bauerlein. So, any other questions before we go? All right, I don't see any, and we're just about to hit 8 o'clock. So, thank you everyone for attending. Thanks to Yoli and Brandon for joining Harry and I, and getting, because we're at the branch, like working right now. So we really appreciate you, taking time out of your regular duties to present with us. Yeah, thank you everyone for your patience with a couple of our technical issues. We really appreciate it, and everyone just kind of rolling with the punches. Like I said, we've recorded tonight's program. It will be up on our YouTube channel in usually a few days. And with that, we'll end the program. So good night, everyone. Hope to see you at our next event soon. Bye-bye.